루이스에 대한 이야기를 하려는 것 같습니다.
Lewis's room smelled very familiar. That part of him. Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
약간 방에 낭만이 있네요, 좀.
He was so proud of being Indian. I think for him, it was a way to be something other than just a Finch.
루이스 핀치. 던 핀치에게 온 편지 같은데요, 뭐지?
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an
정신과
explanation.
약물
As I see
나눠.
it, the trouble began in January,
마약했니?
shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly
Ah.
sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life.
대가리를 자르면 되는군요. 이런 일을 했는데 그 마약 중독으로 정신이 메롱한 거구만.
In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began
이렇게
to
망상을 하는 거야?
wander.
이러면
I asked him to
위험한데.
describe it.
야, 이러면 너 손
He said
잘린다.
he started small.
근데 단순히 손목 나간다고 죽지는 않는데.
He'd feel his way about.
하지만 위험한 거는 맞죠. 굉장히 위험하죠.
Then something moved. Bats
뭐야?
and toads. And things that have not names.
뭐야 갑자기?
He knew it was all in his head,
아, 이렇게 하면 길이 열리는군요.
but he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself.
야, 평범한 선이었다가 뭔가 되게
But he
구체화가
found
됐다.
something more.
잠깐만요. 오, 손 잘릴 뻔했는데 방금?
And then, daydreaming at the cannery.
그래, 위험하잖아.
I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee.
모범 직원 맞거든. 왜냐면 여기 가만히 이렇게 그냥 가만히 이러면서 계속 작업을 하니까. 근데 작업은 계속 잘하고 있어. 그러니까 언뜻 보기에는 이게 잘하는데? 이렇게 보이는 거지. 머릿속으로는 망상을 하고 있는데 아, 야, 좀 커졌다?
It seemed very promising at first.
아니, 이건 격려가 아니라
Meeting a friend.
루이스토피아? 정신이 나갔구만 아주.
On the edge of a city he
이것도
named
자르면은 되겠죠.
Lewistopia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made
야,
musicians.
규모가 좀 커진다 점점. 이거 맞아?
And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won.
마리오야?
They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him.
루이스토피아. 야, 이제 항해까지?
He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville.
뉴 루이스빌. 많이 심각한데?
St. Louis.
세인트 루이스.
He started drifting away from our reality.
이미 멀어진 것 같아.
Minneapolis.
미니애폴리스.
Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery.
돌아가는 거 잊었다고.
Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Louis kept sailing on.
아, 던이 왔네 여기까지. 야, 근데 아직도 정신을 못 차렸어? 싸베반데? 뭐야?
In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a
무슨 소리? 멋있는 여왕에 대한 소문.
handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for
여왕이 찾아 나선 것은 사악한 뱀.
sinister serpents.
오.
He followed the sound of her
그녀의 소리는 은 하프.
silver harp.
코코.
His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon.
뭐야?
Even then, his logic remained sound.
야, 이제 화면이 아예 다 채웠는데?
He knew the world was all in his
오,
imagination.
뭐 이렇게 많이 와.
But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king.
뭐야? 이거 맞아?
For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Louis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace.
단단히 정신이 나갔구만. 야, 여기 문을 이렇게 만들어 놓고 쬐끄만 문을 만들어 놓으면 어쩌자는
It
거지?
was hard to argue with him.
아, 이제 나가는 거야? 퇴근? 퇴근해야지.
He began to forget the world we know.
퇴근하는 길이 아닌 것 같은데.
I think it pained him to remember Louis, the cannery worker.
아, 저기 있네. 아, 데리러 온 거야 또? 진짜.
He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
미친. 뭘로 가야죠? 이쪽으로?
I still thought I could save him.
이미
Even
늦었어.
after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The
와우.
palace would be packed with his companions.
에휴.
Including the wise
아니 뭐
Caliban,
망상을
insisted
해도
on
좀
advising.
정도껏 해야지. 이건 너무 심하잖아. 적당히 하고 집에 가고, 어? 너무 지나친데? 그냥 기다리고 있구만 저기. 기다리고 있구만. 뭐야, 야, 단두대 아니야 이거?
There's only one thing left to do.
이거 단두대잖아. 아, 참. 그 와중 여기 생선이야, 씨. 아, 요런 것도 다 생선을 형상한 것 같은데? 그래. 이제 딱 왕관을 쓴과 동시에 목이 썰린 거네, 그냥. 왜? 현실에서도 이렇게 쓰인 거네.
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
현실에서도 목을 진짜 숙인 거야. 그래서 목이 썰린 거지. 그럼 이제 넌하고
Brother
에디
was
남았나요?
really cool. I wish you could have met him.
가자. 자, 마지막 엄마랑 증조 할머니에 대한 얘기를 들을 차례군요.
She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left.
여긴 어디지?
What happened that night had been coming for a long time.
아, 여기 에디스의 방이야?
Maybe I should have come sooner.
에디스의 이야기부터 하는 거야? 그럴 리는 없는데. 에디스를 벌써 죽여?
But it had to end one way or another.